Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch, a weekly show amplifying the voices of the Virginia grassroots. Each week, we provide engaging conversations about politics, culture, and women making change. Produced by the unstoppable women of Network Nova, our motto is, when we vote, we win. The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and show us some love and become a sponsor through Patreon. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
It is September 30th, and welcome to the Friday Power Lunch. I'm Catherine White, your host, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action, amplifying the voice of the grassroots to get things done. And yes, to make politics fun. And I'm so excited for today's theme, the long game in color. And we have some funkadelic guests to get the show started with. And I'd love to bring them up. First, all the way from San Francisco, we have Steve Phillips, National Political Expert, columnist, best-selling author of Brown is the New White, How the Demographic Revolution Has Created a New American Majority. Can't wait to hear about that. And the forthcoming book, How We Will Win the Civil War, Securing a Multiracial Democracy and Ending White Supremacy for Good. And is that already, it's due out in October. Is it available for purchase, Steve?
It's out October 18th, but you can purchase now.
So how are you doing? I'm so glad you're on the show. How is San Fran this morning?
San Francisco's doing well. I'm doing well as well. Navigating all of the things we're navigating in this world, and counting down to the election result here. There's a very interesting thread I saw on Twitter today about the Kansas results. Tom Bonnier from Target Smart doing a deep dive showing that there's a huge increase in young women registering and voting and turning out, and how that has real implications for elections going forward. So I
think we have to look at the data. And Tom is a friend of the show. We've had him on, and we've been studying that especially the move that's going on. There is something really happening, and I think we have to make sure that we're paying attention. So glad you're with us today, and we're going to unpack this later. And I want to bring up our next guest, not from San Francisco, but he is down in Richmond, Jay Jones, former delegate, and who also ran for Attorney General in Virginia. And why you're here is founder of Meet Our Moment. And you meeting your moment today, Jay?
I'm trying to. And for what it's worth, I'm in Norfolk, which is my hometown, born and raised. I served in Richmond for a few years in the state legislature, yes. But what you can't see off screen is my son. He is right here eating his lunch. But I am a single dad for the moment. My wife has run out. We are in the midst of some challenging weather, as some of you guys might have seen on the television. So she had to run out and get some supplies because I didn't want to miss my opportunity to speak to you guys, to join you again to talk about Meet Our Moment, which is an awesome program that we have started. It's like over a year old now. We're headed into our third training session, but I know that the folks who participate in Power Lunch are incredibly passionate about recruiting and training candidates of color, women, to run for state and local office here in Virginia.
Well, I'm glad you're meeting your moment there. And I know that the governor called a state of emergency. I know we're going to be impacted by this weather. So I'm glad you're getting your stuff together, especially with the young one there. So don't worry about it. We're at a very inclusive lunch. Kids eating lunch, that's just right up our alley. So we're all excited, Jay, to talk to you later. I'm looking forward to that interview. So thank you for being here and making that space for us. All righty. So let's get to our next. I want to say some housekeeping, as I always like to get started with, making sure everybody in the room knows that Michelle McKinney is here. She will help you navigate. If you have any questions about the Power Lunch or what's going on, you can message Michelle McKinney. She definitely will take care of you. She is our newcomer liaison. And rules of the road. We love you for use the chat. Just be civil. That's great. So super. And lastly, I can't forget about us. Awesome team, Friday Power Lunch, and like investing in the grassroots is really important. And sometimes it's kind of forgotten. Yeah, we've been doing this for 6 years. We pulled off 3 Women's Summit. We do this every week. And that little love sure goes a long way. So if you want to become a patron, thank you to those who are in the room, by the way. We want to keep it going. So if you want to invest in us, please do. That's awesome. And next, my favorite part, I want to bring up co-host, show messenger, Funkadelic, Delicious, Fennell Norton. Hey.
Hey there, how are you? I love that song so much. It's one of my favorite songs. It's so inspiring. I love those kids from the Academy. I mean, who can't feel inspired after seeing that?
I know. And I loved it. I dug a little deep in the words, and it was all about, like, fighting the status quo and what keeps us from really being free. I just love that. And I'm like, what a better fitting song for today, to not trespass on your mind, burn everything down you think, and get out of that place that maybe has you stuck. So yeah. Good choice.
Yeah. So I was so excited because there's so many things that we're going to get to talk about with Steve, but there were a couple of events today that happened this week that I wanted to talk about. First of all, I just want to say that we're thinking about everybody who has friends and family in Florida. I do, and I've had some connection with some of them, and they're all doing well. But the devastation there has been really just horrifying. So you did a couple of tweets though, and I think that they are relevant, and I think that they're important. So I wanted you to just talk about your tweet to Florida. The good stuff as well as some things that we shouldn't forget.
The tweet to Florida?
Yeah, the tweet about Governor DeSantis 2013.
Yeah, that tweet. Yeah, that tweet was, it's funny when you what goes around comes around. What you're taught is always be kind, be compassionate, because you never know when it's going to be your time that something may happen. And those folks in Florida are going to need this federal help. But, before Governor DeSantis was governor, he was a congressman, his first vote was to vote against the aid to the New Jersey hurricane families. And so we have to call people out.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because what I think that this sort of helps demonstrate is a compassionate leader, which is really what we have in the Biden administration, because they are doing absolutely every single thing that they can as quickly as they can. And so I think that's important, because sometimes it wasn't reciprocated as when Governor DeSantis took that vote. But what I also think is important is that as he's on TV and all of these things are happening, I don't want folks in Florida to be deterred, because he still needs to be voted where? Out. So I just want us to keep that in mind.
You're just putting it down. Out. Yeah. I'm all about that. I like that.
And did you want to talk about Gavin Newsom? Because I think he's worth talking about today too.
Yeah. Gavin Newsom. You have a list. I'm just going to let you go at it.
Yeah. So Gavin Newsom he's been in the news for a while now. Whether he'll run for president or not, I don't know. At this moment, I don't care. But what I really care about is the fact that he thinks that it's important that we really start to put Republicans on blast for the kind of government that they actually run. And so he has been just trolling in Florida like you would not believe. So, for example, and if anybody's not following him on TikTok, he's really good on TikTok too. But 8 of the 10 states with the highest murder rates are Republican states. And so as they get ready to talk about law and order and crime, I think it's important that we keep on reminding them that the states that have the highest incidence are them. And then when we talk about taxes, California actually has a lower tax rate than Texas does. And then what makes it even more significant to me is the gun death rate in Texas is 67% higher than California and many other states. So all of these issues that they are trying to stand on top of right now, it's important that we start to speak the truth about what kind of government they run. And if you want to think about something even more relevant, just look at Mississippi. Just saying.
Yeah, just saying. And I agree with you. You got to call it out where it is. And the contrast is so important, right? And it is about governing in the end and good policy. So, running on the record, just pointing to these things like crime. And we got to address these things, but we also, that's why I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. There is so much we cannot ignore, and so much that we have to talk about, and not, follow them down where they want to take us. Correct? I mean, that's, yes.
Yeah, we need to play offense.
Yeah, and so we tried to do that. So we went down for the Equal Rights Amendment to try to get the Senate to, hear it. And I have to tell you how frustrating it was to have to go down again to fight for something. So it seems simple that if you put the vote on the floor for the Equal Rights Amendment, maybe that will show what's going on. That really, in this time where we've been pulled out of the Constitution, pulled out of any constitutional protections, that maybe this vote on the floor. And it was really insulting. Senator Schumer was like, you have to show up. We're not sure if it's really important. And I'm like, really? Are you serious? But we did. We showed up down there, and that was frustrating but necessary because we got it out in the press, which was nice. And then what also gave me some hope was Glenn Youngkin got a taste of some medicine from the youth. The youth, like in this song, are standing up, and he's trying to go after this transgender students and trying to make them uncomfortable in school and rolling back the protections that Governor North Ralpham put in. And guess what happened? What'd you see? I saw people walk out, skip the total walkouts,
That's what happens when you fight back, when you stand up. And so that's where we have to go. And that's why I'm so excited about the conversation with Steve, because I think he's going to talk to us about some things that maybe we thought we knew, but he knows. And so yes. I'm just for us to hear about that.
Let's get into that, because I read his article, and I'll just say, and I'll let you get to it, when he wrote, unless Democrats start fighting like they mean it, they're going to lose Congress. So we got to go all in. We've been trying to go all in, and I'm interested to hear his analysis of what he thinks. So I'm going to hand it over to you, my friend, and enjoy this segment. I know you've been very, very excited. So I'll see you on the other side.
Okay, I'll see you on the other side. Steve.
Right, Steve, yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Steve. I am so excited to have the opportunity to talk to you today. So I know that we're going to talk about the new book, but I got so excited when I heard about the new Majority Index. So I'd like for you to just take a little minute to talk about democracy in color so you can sort of ground us and then take us into the new Majority Index.
So Democracy in Color is the organization that I founded and run, and it's really we have a podcast. We talk about a color conscious podcast about politics, and we're really talking about a color conscious analysis of what's happening in this country. And we all aspire to not have race and color be determinative factors. It's just simply an incontrovertible fact that, just from a data standpoint, nearly 90% of African Americans vote Democratic, and roughly 44% of whites. That's every single exit poll since 1976. And so the significance of that, and that's what my first book, Brown is the New White, was about, was to quantify that there is in fact a new American majority consisting of the overwhelming majority of people of color and a meaningful minority of whites. Because while the majority of whites have never voted Democrat or progressive, there's been a consistent, meaningful minority ongoing sectors. There's definitely a floor there as well, and that grouping gets discounted. But when that grouping is allied with the voters of color, that's the majority of people in the election. And that's the majority of people who elected Obama, re-elected Obama, and it really flipped the Congress and the Senate as well. So we think it's critical to have a race-conscious analysis of what's actually going on in politics. And so that's the point of view and the insight and analysis that we try to provide to the country through Democracy in Color, through our podcast, through my columns, and through the new book, How We Win the Civil War, which has a whole chapter looking at Virginia as a case study, by the way, in terms of how to actually go about making progress and win. And so what New Majority Index is it's taking that analysis and applying it to the congressional races. And so there's none of the congressional ratings. You get these, the Cook Political Report says it's a D+2, and then what is the Nate Silver's piece, 538 has a whole piece where they just look at the polling end. And that's all interesting information. But none of it incorporates race, which I talked about is a fundamental, just from a statistical standpoint, 90% of African Americans, 40% of whites. That gap is undeniable. and relevant just in terms of understanding and predicting an election. So what we've done is we've taken the same data that the Cook Political Report looks at in terms of past election results, comparing how a district voted for president versus how the country voted for president, which is a relevant and useful data point. But we've added into that the racial demographic information. So we look at what is the racial composition of that district, how many people of color, what percentage of people of color are in the district. And then we also look at the voter turnout differentials. And that's where you get a lot of the insight around what's possible, because almost all of these districts have white voters turn out and vote at a higher level. And if you were to increase the voters of color, that has a profound impact on the elections. In a lot of ways, that's what happened in 2020. So on election night 2020, Joe Biden says, we're ahead in Georgia. That's not one we expected, but it's one Stacey Abrams expected, because she could do the math and saw the significance of increasing the turnout of voters of color and how that could actually flip and transform an election, ultimately flip and transform the whole country by flipping those 2 Senate seats. So that's what the new majority index is. We recalculate every single congressional district by adding in that racial data, and it shows that there are more competitive seats if you focus in on doing the work of increasing voter turnout within those particular districts.
So then, Steve, so that brings up 2 questions, and you can answer them. So the first one is voter suppression. How does that impact this? And then in terms of doing the work, can you talk a little bit about what that means in terms of investing in these communities?
So voter suppression is widespread, rampant, and long-standing, right? I mean, it's the fundamental premise of my new book is that the Confederates have never stopped fighting the Civil War. And Mississippi and South Carolina, after the Civil War, were majority Black states. And so they had to suppress the vote in terms of if the white Confederates were going to continue to hold power. And it's just continued all the way along through, grandfather clauses, actual outright terrorism, all these, we had white primaries in this country. Texas and several states had only whites could vote in the primaries. And the Supreme Court actually upheld that for a while, saying that, well, the parties are private actors, not controlled by the government. And so long as people can vote in the general election. But in the South, certainly in the deep South, it was only Democrats that were there. And so we could legitimately have white primaries. So the voter suppression is a long-standing piece. And so it's continued to pace and accelerated in 2021. As in all these different states where there had been progress of people of color voting, a whole slew of laws were passed that were continuing to suppress. So in Harris County, Texas, where Houston is, they had 24-hour voting. They tried to ban, now they're banning that. People created drop boxes. So you don't have to travel to a distant location, make it easy and accessible to vote. They're banning that. So all the things that make it possible to expand democracy are things that they've been passing laws to repress. But so then that gets to what you need to do. And so a big fundamental part of it is finding, backing, and supporting the groups, organizations, and leaders who are doing the work of organizing people, talking with people, helping them overcome these obstacles, be able to vote. So one of the groups that I feature in my book is New Virginia Majority. It's been doing this work for a long time in Virginia around expanding the electorate and expanding people of color. So you have community-based organizers who can go to people's homes, provide rides to the polls, all those types of activities that help to overcome the voter suppression obstacles. And so in a lot of ways, that's the fundamental battle, is between their efforts to suppress democracy and our efforts to expand it. And that because they know, and what we need to know is that if we expand the democracy and we participates, that we will win these elections.
So how do we do it? So why isn't this happening everywhere? Because you have all the congressional districts that you list that says, hey, this one is an R+2, but if you do this, you become a D+1. So what's the work? What is the actual work on the ground?
Fundamental, the work is voter turnout. And so there's a very widespread, almost universal misconception about midterm elections. is that people, and particularly this data point that the party in power loses seats in the midterm. So historically, people have always been like, the narrative is that, well, the voters then turn on that president's party and punish them in terms of the midterm elections. And that's what explains what goes on. But that is not what it happens in midterms. To the extent there's a correlation with the in power party, it has to do with complacency. And so people feel like, oh, well, we've got the White House, so we don't need to turn out and vote. Whereas the other side is still, amped up and, highly energized and turn out in larger numbers. And that's how they actually win. That's what happened in Virginia in the gubernatorial in 2021. There's all this, assumption that like, oh, well, the voters, decided that they didn't like, critical race theory. And so then they changed their minds and voted for Youngkin. It's not what happened at all. Is that Youngkin, well, first of all, Virginia voters did not decide 12 months after electing Joe Biden by 10 points that all of a sudden they were tired of electing Democrats. That's not at all what happened. He did a much better job, and it's very statistically provable, of motivating, galvanizing, scaring, inflaming his voters to come out in larger numbers. Whereas the increase for the Republicans was far higher over 2017 than the increase for the Democrats. So they riled up and fanned the flames of white racial resentment, fear, anxiety to get people to come out to vote. So it's not a question of changing people's minds. It's what a part of the problem is that people, even in the Democratic Party, don't often understand. They try to moderate their message or try to not inflame people. What they need to be doing is inspiring people to come out and vote and explaining the stakes and be able to get them to turn out in larger numbers. So it's investing in groups who are doing that type of work. It's communicating the messages around what's at stake. And that was one of the things I was very happy to see about the White House doing the student debt relief. And they're thinking around why to do it. It's like, well, we need to inspire young people and people of color and show them that it's relevant to actually turn out. And so that's the fundamental proposition. These elections are all about turnout. Even in all the redistricted seats and all the 435 House seats, Biden got the most vote in 226 of them. And so if we just get those voters back out, we will actually hold the House. But there's not enough investment and focus on getting the voters out. And there's still too much effort spent on television ads trying to come up with cute, language appeals that'll supposedly, convince people to go with you, whereas you really just need to summon them to the fight. And that's how you win.
So let me ask a question then. So then some would say, well, oh my goodness, this is really all based on suburban women. We need to get suburban women back out. So what you were saying is certainly it'd be great to have them back out. We need that. It's a big chunk of them. But what you're also saying is don't minimize communities of colors and other people who come out during some of the bigger elections. You need to do legislation that says that there was a reason for them to have come out in the first place.
Exactly. In terms of defining the stakes for those communities and clarifying for them. So what happened in the Virginia gubernatorial is that you had Youngkin running around saying in his, he cracked the code of how to convince white people that their culture, their, what's being taught to their children is under assault. And then you had McAuliffe basically saying, no, that's not true. But you didn't have McAuliffe saying, no, they are trying to whitewash history and trying to erase the facts of what have happened, to try to really convince the children that there is no need to be engaged in efforts around justice and equality within this country. And it's the height of painful irony that it's in the capital of the Confederacy where this is taking place. It's in the state that has a group, United Daughters of the Confederacy, that I spent a considerable amount of time talking about in my book, about how they have this children of the Confederacy. They have a catechism that they require these children to recite that brainwashes them, that whitewashes their understanding of what society is. And that actually creates the lack of support for efforts to bring about equality within this country. So it's calling it out and engaging the fight and summoning people to the fight. And then what I'm trying to document is that when we in fact do that, that we in fact win. And so even in all those in terms of suburban women, et cetera, the three Virginia congressional districts, 2, 7, and 10, there's still a significant turnout differential between people of color and whites. So in the second district, there's a 10%, negative 10% turnout of compared to whites and people of color, 6% in 7 and 7% in 10. So increasing the turnout in those districts is the way to hold those seats.
That is fantastic. The other question that I wanted to ask you is, I listened to you talk about how sometimes we sort of run away from these conversations, especially around race, when race is the crux of what it's all about. And you talked about the example of what President Biden can say that President Obama couldn't say, and how important it was for him to sort of lead into this moment. Can you talk about that a little bit? And you gave the example of the Professor Gates.
Right. So Henry Louis Gates is one of the most, renowned professors in the country. He's at Harvard. He runs an institute at Harvard. He does this, multiple television specials. And early in Obama's administration, he was arrested going into his own house in Cambridge. So somebody a neighbor had seen this black man trying to get into this house and called the police, and the police came and arrested him in his own house. And Obama couldn't even say, well, he did say, but he had tremendous blowback that was stupid. And there was such a huge backlash because there's such an undercurrent of fear about the country slipping away from those who want it to be a white country, that Obama had to have this beer summit and invite the cop and Professor Gates to the White House. And it's just absurd. Whereas Biden, as a white man, can say more. It's kind of a Nixon going to China type of a thing, right? I mean, Biden launched his presidential campaign talking about the 2017 Charlottesville protest, where they were trying to defend the Confederate monuments. And Heather Heyer, a white woman, was killed in that protest. And Biden was talking about that this is a battle for the soul of our nation. And so he has begun in some ways, and really needs to go even further, but it also his speech he gave in Philadelphia recently, talking about how the democracy is under attack. And so he can take it further. The problem is that too many people still in Democratic consulting world fear that if you name this fight, that then white people will flee and you'll lose all this different support of whites. And it does not recognize and appreciate throughout the entire history of this country, from its founding through the Civil War to today, there have always been whites who have wanted and supported this country being a multiracial democracy. And what I'm trying to explain is that there are enough of those people that would, and actually you will get more, and that's the best way to increase your white support, is to challenge people to rise to their highest and best selves. And when you do that, then you also inspire and clarify for people of color. And that is the majority coalition that elected and reelected Obama, that has won 9 of 10 elections statewide in Virginia. And so that, I would argue, is the formula for how we win this Civil War.
Yeah, I think, and we're going to talk about your book in just a minute, but I do want to talk about Dobbs and what you think the implications of that is. But I don't want to forget to come back that, we thought that when Lincoln was assassinated, that everybody was really sad and brokenhearted, but there were really a whole group of people who were very excited that he was assassinated because they did not want to see Black people come to a place of equality. But
so you want on that, because you guys are in Virginia, where we had that huge, enormous Robert E. Lee statue for so many years. That statue went up decades before the Lincoln Memorial. And so there was resistance to creating the Lincoln Memorial. So it wasn't just that it wasn't just in 1865 that they were not that sad. They did not want there being a monument to the man who had ended slavery in this country and fought it and blocked it for decades. Lincoln Memorial didn't go up until the late 1920s. So this level of holding on to and preserving the legacy of the Confederacy and of this notion that it's a white country is very, very long standing. But I think what we need to internalize and really lean into is that it is in fact a minority view and that if we call it out, then we will be able to actually prevail and be able to make significant progress.
So let's talk about Dobbs. What do you think the implications are on Congress, the Dobbs decision?
Well, it gets to this question of turnout, right? That it's motivating people who have not historically participated in midterm elections. And that's a very frightening prospect for the Republicans. And so that's why they're all scrubbing their websites to try to claim, erase their whole, Handmaid's Tale public policy agenda. And so this is what the Tom Bonier's Twitter thread was about today, which I retweeted this morning. And Kansas is not, the most radical state within the country, but he's showing demonstrably that younger women registering and are turning out at a higher level than other age groups and other demographic groupings. And so that is the underpinning of how they were able to have that impact on that ballot measure in Kansas. And if they can do that in Kansas, then the implications are profound, and particularly in terms of the midterm elections. Because if younger people, younger women in particular, are registering and voting and participating, it means the Democrats have a better chance to hold the House in terms of all those different seats where the turnout will be closer to what the presidential level is. And it means that people like Stacey Abrams can win her election in Georgia, because the large numbers of younger women and how the electorate is transforming itself there. So the ramifications are quite profound. And it's reflective of the history of how all this has worked, is that you have a minority of people who are trying to impose a minority agenda by suppressing democracy. I mean, if you thought everybody who really agreed with you, you wouldn't need to suppress democracy, and you would be fine with many people as possible voting. You wouldn't need to spend so much effort passing all these laws restricting participation. But they know it's a minority agenda, and and so the Supreme Court is, a powerful, but clearly we're now seeing articulating a position that is not the viewpoint of the majority of the American people.
So let's do, and you also talk about Stacey Abrams, and I think in one of your podcasts, someone asked the question, why isn't everyone using the Stacey Abrams strategy, and why isn't she getting more money and support? I think you gave the example of the money that she got versus maybe, I think it was Iowa. So you want to talk a little bit about where is the money, and why isn't it going to some of the places that it really needs to go to?
Well, people are still behind the times in terms of their understanding of what the electorate is. I mean, historically in this country, politics has, because of voter suppression and because of immigration policy, which was very explicitly restrictive to whites. I mean, to become a white person in this country, the very first immigration laws, you had to be a free white person. And that was the explicit policy up to the 1950s, and the practical policy until 1965. So the country is actually unnaturally white in terms of its composition. And so the electorate transformation is changing politics, and it's changing politics in a way that not all the consultants and analysts have kept up with. And so they continue to think that it's just competition on white people. You have to find those whites who are allegedly swing voters and try to persuade them and convince them. And that's how elections turn out. I met Stacey Abrams 10 years ago in 2012. And she was saying then, she says, we're losing in Georgia by 230,000 votes on average. There are 1.5 million eligible non-voting people of color. I'm going to go register them, and I'm going to get them to vote. And that was the work that she's been engaged in ever since 2012. And that's what bore fruit in 2020 and in 2021. But that's still not the conventional wisdom. So the example I gave, like the 2020 Senate race, Senate Majority PAC, the Super PAC, whose role and mission is to elect Democrats to the Senate, as of August 1st, just, a few months before the election in 2020, they had spent $7 million in Iowa and $0 in Georgia. And if you think of it, it's like, what data point would you look at to arrive at that conclusion? right? The 2016 presidential, Georgia was closer than Iowa. The 2018 gubernatorial, Georgia was closer than Iowa. What is the data set that would lead you to think that Iowa deserves 7 million and Georgia deserves 0? When that's like saying, that's why election night Biden was so surprised that they had won. So it's people like Stacey and New Georgia Project and Leslie Small, actually Maya Morrison, who used to be New Virginia Majority, now is with Fair Fight, Stacey's group, doing work there. Those entities are not seen as the leaders and the brilliant strategists and the people to follow in the Democratic Party still, even after all of this track record of success. And it's still, where's my book? Oh, Isabel Wilkerson's book, Cast, was really a mainstay for me in writing my book. And she talks about, we are all actors on a stage that was set long before we arrived. And the roles are determined in terms of who gets to be where and in what position, and who has the center position, who has the side level position. And so we've had 46 presidents, all of them men, 45 of them white men. So the role of president is reserved for a white man. So the role of leader and strategist and the brilliant tactician person is not reserved for people who look like Stacey Abrams. And so this is a process people need to overcome, but it also, I think, is the undercurrent of the kind of the implicit bias that affects where the resource allocation goes to.
So, Catherine, my question is, so do we have time? Do we have time? I wanted to just quickly show a minute of Steve's new book, How We Win the Civil War. And then I promise, and then we can just move.
And I want to get ready for bringing up Senator McClellan to address exactly what Steve's talking about too, and introduce him to Senator McClellan while we watch the video. All right.
We need to have the doors of the Capitol. We need backup.
We are at war, a civil war. We've been in this war since 1861. This prolonged war is a battle between those who believe America is fundamentally a white nation and those who believe that this is a multiracial democracy. Wars are not just fought with guns and bullets on a battlefield. They're also fought with words and ideas, with policies and legislation. Those fighting for white supremacy have always been the minority and continue to rely on an old Confederate battle plan rooted in inciting fear, distorting the truth, and silently sanctioning terrorism. By contrast, we, the multiracial progressive new American majority, have never stopped striving for freedom, justice, and equality for all. In recent years, the new American majority has been fighting with a liberation battle plan of their own. We need to prioritize and invest in progressive leaders and organizations who mobilize voters and have proven that they know how to win. This is how we win the Civil War.
I was going to say, Steve has to go in just a few minutes. So we've got just a few minutes. So do what you want to do, Catherine. You want to bring up Jimmy Collins?
Yeah, I do for a sec. I think it's a good transition if you have a minute. And then we'll get to Jay Jones, who's doing this work, which I really meeting the moment of investing in candidates and all that. I would like to introduce you to Senator McClellan. If you don't know her, Steve, she ran for governor, and I think she could speak to a few things that you're talking about. Hello, Senator.
I am a big fan of Senator McClellan, and I am a strong deep hope that Senator McClellan will be the next governor of Georgia, of Virginia.
Pierre, can you make her a co-host, please?
Yeah, make her a co-host so she could speak. And what you said about Virginia, I mean, I think also Senator McClellan would have been able to push back in real time. So Senator McClellan, how are you? Welcome to the Power Lunch. I'm so glad I saw you in the room. So
I'm good. Thank you. Good to be here. Good to see you, Steve. I cannot wait to read the book. And I have probably more to say than I can say in a minute, but glad to share whatever thoughts you want me to share.
I would say, Steve, if you can stick a minute, do you have to pop?
I have a couple minutes.
Okay, then, yeah, because Senator, I just want to hear your thoughts on everything you've been listening to and relate it to what we're in the midterms and what you think we should do. I mean, are you there? Oh.
Hear me okay? I think I froze.
It's okay. I can hear you though. Go ahead.
Hold on one sec. All right, here I am. Steve is right. I think the only thing that I would add is this is probably a war that predated 1861, and 1861 was just what brought it to the forefront. And I think the only other thing I'd add is the type of work that Steve's talking about to expand the electorate takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of energy that I think a lot of mainstream consultants and strategists aren't comfortable with, because they think in 9-month, maybe 12-month cycles and not in years. But Georgia didn't happen overnight. New Virginia majorities work didn't happen overnight. And we even saw in our primary last year, if you look at primary elections, let alone general elections, that a lot of communities of color don't think about and on a regular basis primaries, or why they should even vote. You've got to go into those communities, tell them there's a primary or an election, tell them why their vote matters, and they're not watching the TV commercials. They need someone to be in the community, knocking on their door, talking to them one-on-one, coming to their, meeting them where they are. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of money that a lot of people think, oh, if we just put this on TV, then they will come. But that's not happening. So we really need to get in the trenches and meet voters where they are, to meet new voters, especially where they are, to expand that electorate.
And hold that thought, Steve. Last words, and I know for now I'll let you do the wrap up. This has been a special day having you on.
Well, I'm delighted to be here in particular because of the significance of Virginia, and I think that gets overlooked and underappreciated. In that, for most of the past century, Virginia was a very reliably conservative and Republican state, and that it's really been both the demographic transformation and the organization, as well as the leadership piece. And so this is one of I did an interview with Jonathan Caper. I was saying there's kind of like 3 elements that are necessary to manifest the potential. And so part of it is the investment in the group. So we've talked about that. Part of it is the public policy agenda that speaks to these communities. And then part of it is having the leaders who can inspire. And so that all of those elements are, in fact, there in Virginia. I'm not kidding when I say that I do hope that Senator McClellan runs again for governor, and that she can provide that kind of leadership role in that regard. The policy work that she has done around the expanding of democracy and the Voting Rights Act there, the driver's license pieces, all of the progressive legislation, the Medicaid expansion, are the types of things that inspire people. So that is why I'm trying to lift up Virginia as an example. I think it really is a key example in this country of how to transform a place so that it can be progressive. So all the elements are there in terms of Virginia itself, but it really can and should be a model for the whole country.
Yeah, well, Steve, thank you so much for being with us today. This was honestly, I happened upon you, and now I can't stop following you. And I'm reading your podcast, so I'm probably a stalker, because I just think that what you say is so relevant and so true. And we need every bit of inspiration that we can get to do what we can to pull off this next election. But I wanted to just give a plug for how we win the Civil War. We have information that's going to be in the chat. And you guys get the book, because it does have the strategies that we need moving forward so that we can win the war. So thank you so much, Steve. And thank you, Senator McClellan.
Great. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Bye, Steve. Senator, let's keep Jennifer on for a second. I think that's something we should work on. I think doing this kind of work the next couple of years, I'm in. Trying to build that infrastructure like Georgia did. We've been trying to do it. So I hope let's talk about that, make it happen.
So, Catherine,
yes,
I I'm sorry, I'm talking all over you, but I wanted to say before I left, I know that in North Carolina, they're really working hard to pull off this election for Sherry Beasley. And one of the things that they have is that I think is coming up this week, they have 14 youth groups that are going to be going out to neighborhoods of color to talk to young African-American men about voting. So at this point, I think that, all of us around the phone can figure out what are the specific tactics that we can put in place over the next 3 weeks that makes something happen. So I'm all into. We'll have to figure it out.
Senator, last words.
Well, I think we need to get out of the habit of thinking about this movement in terms of individual election cycles, and think of this as long-term. I mean, it's in your title, the long game in color, and the long game means knocking on doors and showing up in communities year-round, every year, not just showing up, August at the earliest, and especially not just showing up the last 3 Sundays in an election.
Oh, right. I'm so glad you came on, and I know we'll be talking again. And I know that you're doing hopefully everything you can to make sure that our Congress people get reelected, hitting those doors. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I can't wait to hear Jay.
Yeah, I mean, either. This is what I love, and I want to call up Jay Jones. Let's get him on. And is the little one all settled, Jay? Are you good?
Well,
yeah, I'm okay. He's like just over there, but we're okay.
Yeah, we just need to make sure that before Jay goes, he introduces the baby. So just saying.
Well, I don't know. That may cause a little chaos. Maybe after Jay, right? So
yes, he has settled down. He is sleeping. I'm not gonna hush my voice while I chat, but we got him down, so it's good. Good day.
So yeah, let's reintroduce for people that maybe came in the room. We still have people coming in the room. I knew you as a former delegate, and then you ran. Put Jay back on. I love Fennell though. She can stick around. There's Jay. You former delegate, and then you did run. You know a lot about running for office. You ran statewide for Attorney General, and then you're founder of Meet Our Moment, and you did an organization that recruits and trains minority candidates, STEM candidates. Let's get right to it. Let's talk about that. I mean, this mission. When you hear from Steve, does it kind of speak to you about why you felt like you needed to found Meet the Moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Steve's, and I know his work well, and so it was a treat to be able to hear him present to you guys this afternoon. But I think, and Jen can I think will agree with me, as you go around this state, Virginia is a really big place, right? 8.5 million people more, plus growing by the day, and there are different types of communities. And I think for a long time, folks have thought about Virginia as a monolithic state. There's a big white vote, there's a big black vote, that's it. But that's wrong. And as I got to know people across Virginia running for Attorney General last year, it became very clear to me that there are a lot of talented folks, people of color, women, who really are great public servants, but they don't know the first thing about running for office. It's really difficult. It is a lot of information that is not really put in front of folks. I was lucky. My father was in politics for a long time. But even when I ran for the first time in 2017, I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to build a campaign. I didn't know how to raise money. That was stuff that I all learned on the fly. But it became very clear to me that if you give folks this tool, right, if you give them what we do as a one-day, sort of boot camp, it's a crash course about how to run for office at the state and local level, that they can take that and they can run with it and they can go win. And I'm proud to say we've trained 25 people so far. We had our first session last year in December in Richmond, and our second session in this past April in Charlottesville. And we've had 25 people come through, and we've had 7 now who have declared that they're running for office in 2022 and 2023. And we had our first win back in June. If you guys know Sonia Vasquez Luna, who is a candidate for the city council in Manassas City, she came through our program and she came in first in their sort of jungle primary back in June. And so what we're putting together, I think, is working and it's growing, and I'm so incredibly proud of it because I do think it plays an important role in the broader process.
Yeah, and what you talk about is providing those tools and resources. And what does that look like in Meet the Moment when you talk about giving them the tools and then the resources?
Yeah, and so we do this twice a year. It's one Saturday, and what I'm really proud of is that not only do we have people coming from all over the state, we've had candidates from every corner of Virginia, including South Side, Southwest, Shenandoah Valley, but it's obviously all diverse people, people of color and women. But the people who present, in addition to those who attend, they are themselves people of color or women, or if they're not, they have worked in a high level capacity for a candidate of color or a female candidate. So I'll give you an example. Sam Signori, who ran my campaign for Attorney General last year and is currently running Abigail Spanberger's race for Congress, he does the sort of 30,000 foot view because he's worked for a Black candidate. He's worked for female candidates, including Wendy Goditis before me. So he knows how this is a little bit different than your average run-of-the-mill person. And so you learn about what to expect. You learn about how to raise money from a finance consultant. You learn about why direct mail is important from a mail consultant. You learn about media and communications and how to engage with a local reporter or someone who is invested in your race. And we do a field program as well. And so at the end of it, we also hear from current or former state and local officials who are, people of color, women themselves on the younger side, to give an unvarnished view of what it's like, because we've all seen Veep, we've all seen The West Wing, we've all seen Scandal. There's some truth to all of those, but there's a lot of fiction. But you're only going to understand what is really happening and how this really works if you're hearing from the people who were doing it themselves.
Yeah, and so in the resources, because I was speaking to Courtney Gardner from Renew US, which helps trains candidates, minority candidates too. And that's another piece of it. And so that piece of it, you have this one-day training, you learn a lot, and then, you have to figure out how to build this critical team. So does Meet the Moment go past that moment? I mean, what do you do going, like, it seems like to me, a lot of times we recruit candidates, but there's so much going on. It's almost like they need a mentor, like attached to them
to guide them through the process.
Yeah.
So let me also say this. The biggest part of this program and the thing that I'm most proud of is that it's free. Money is so often a barrier for people to get involved in politics. If you don't have personal wealth or you don't have a whole bunch of connections to really wealthy people, it can be really daunting to get involved or to even take a step to get involved, which is this. But we keep it free for everybody. That's why I raise money for this, but every dollar that comes in goes right back into this program. So if you're coming from a distance away, we pay for your hotel for a night. We give everybody who attends free headshots, professional headshots. We feed them a couple of times. It's a really sort of soup to nuts operation, but we stay engaged with them. We don't give money directly to candidates. The only thing that Meet Our Moment does is we pay a filing fee for the candidate if they decide to run. But we certainly stay engaged with them, keep on them. They have all of the information from the presenters. They're free to ask them questions. The people who participate in this on sort of both sides of it are committed to building this bench. It's one thing to hear people talk about it. It's another thing to do it. I was never afraid to say, hey, I want to train somebody, because if they become the first Black Attorney General and it's not me, I don't care, because that's someone who shares my values and ideals who's in that position. And let's say we run against each other, that's even better, because it won't be about anything but the issues. And if they win the day, then I've done my job. And so I think what you've seen from a lot of public officials who talk about it, they themselves are actually afraid of rolling up their sleeves and training people to come behind them, because that might then push them up or out. But I think that's a good thing. I think competition is healthy. I think we want more people at the table. We want diverse voices at the table. We know how diverse Virginia is, and our elected officials at every level should reflect that. And we now see school boards are super duper important. City councils, boards of supervisors, really, really important. Constitutional office, really, really important. And so we can't just focus on the federal stuff. I know we got federal elections coming up here in November, but we are electing people all the time. And if we want to win back this Virginia decade, we've got to really sort of dig our heels in and say, okay, we got to put in the work at these lower, less glamorous places, because that also provides a training ground for people to then run for the House of Delegates, to run for the state Senate, to run for Congress. And that's a longer, a medium and longer term proposition, but I'm all fully bought into that.
Yeah, I think exactly, because it just will build and compoundly build as you train people. And I know right now there's a lot of us looking at, how do the hard part is this recruiting candidates, right? And I know we have some seats empty, like in House District 22 in Prince William, that can help Wexton and Spanberger, and HD 30 could help Wexton. 86 is empty. We could help Herb Jones, and 89, 90, 100. How do we, when you go about recruiting, that seems like the hard part of it is looking at the map. I mean, is it just that you just go ahead and do you actually go into these harder districts and actually look?
Oh yeah.
Like,
I mean,
this is where we're
look,
going, yeah, okay.
I mean, I spend a ton of time, in my free time, right? Going and meeting with people, calling people, engaging with the community leaders to say, who do you know? Who do you think would be a good person to do this? I obviously do stuff just like this, and I make personal pitches to recruit. I just dropped our application link in the chat that our next session is December 3rd in Prince William. We do it in a different part of the state each time. Again, it's one day. So if you know a family member, a church member, a coworker, someone who you go to the HOA meeting with, and you think, hey, they might be a good person to run, send them our way. That's really, really important. But I do get on the road. I do go travel. I do go recruit, because to me, this is a place where we have not invested. And I saw Lindley Thorne was on here, and I know, shout out Rural Ground Game, because I've also not given up the ghost on recruiting Democrats in the rural parts of the state too. And we may not win in 2022 in those elections in these rural areas, but you've got to start. And that's how you build to get to 30% and 35% and 40% and on and on and on, because we've seen we can't win statewide elections if we're getting 15% in some of these areas. But this is a bigger project, right? It's a bigger vision to change Virginia. We took a big step back last year, right? Losing all 3 statewide offices, losing the House. I was devastated. I know you guys were too, but we can only start to reclaim that if we've got good people who are running for office. And a lot of people have been dissuaded because of the environment, because of what they see. But it's folks like you who are on the Zoom who are pretty convincing, who can tell those folks who are good at it, right, who could be good at it, to come get trained for free one day, and then you're unleashed. And then you get our, I'd say, benefit of the network, benefit of the nurturing, benefit of all of it as you sort of walk on your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think the struggle, if we could dig a little deeper, when we did the debrief with about 16 candidates that didn't win, was actually when you're working with the party piece of it, and there's certain things you have to meet. That's that whole navigation of the bar, like if you'll get money, if you get help, if you can get access to the van. And then it seems to have another barrier that can kind of scare people away, because it doesn't feel very much like as supportive as like when you're getting trained. That sounds like nice. And then when you get into the real game, and it's like, well, who will really invest money? Who will really invest money in you, right? And then navigating all those with the the party expectations and how you get into that. And
the elbows are a little sharper, once you actually step into the arena, right? Everybody knows the Teddy Roosevelt quote, but
I think that's where we need to change it. I mean, I think a little bit in my mind, just you're off the cuff here. I wasn't planning to speak about this, but I really find that when I'm talking to candidates and we have them come in the room, so we're getting personal with them, this is where the obstacles, are a little bit there. And then you with the consultants of where they want to spend money. And like we said, convincing people to invest in certain candidates and organizations like yours, right? Yeah. That's where we really need to say to people that if you put your money into this, into the grassroots or in organizations, this will really actually bring what we want in the long game, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. And, again, everybody knows the Teddy Roosevelt quote about the man in the arena. I want more people in the arena, but I think it's easier to understand it if you think about Martin Luther King's quote about, injustice everywhere, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, right? We're tied together in this inescapable garment of destiny. We can't lose sight of that. So what happens in Southside matters to me in Norfolk, and what happens in Danville, matters to you guys in Nova. That is a really, really big thing for us to sort of synthesize and think about, because it's easy to say, well, I only care about Herndon, or I only care about Charlottesville, or I only care about Bristol.
Races, right? Like you can't.
Right. And so I think when we take a longer view, it really is, I think, beneficial for us to say, hey, look, $25 or $250 or $1,000 to these candidates who are promising people really will help in the long run, because I've won elections and I've lost elections. And I've learned more in loss than I have in victory. But, I say that in a way to say, if you run and you lose in 22 or 23 or 24, that'll make you a better candidate the next time you do it, because you got to get up after you fall off the horse and do it again. You know, I'm speaking not only for myself, but for so many other people. And so it's on us. It's incumbent upon people like me, people like Jen, to tell people that and to give them that reassurance, because it is a daunting thing to say, hey, I'm going to put myself out there, even just for my neighbors in a school board race, right? It's a whole different thing when you're putting yourself out there in front of the entire state, like Jen did, like I did, like so many other people have done. But no matter what, the campaign and the structure and what you need to know, it's all pretty much the same. And so that's what we do, is we give you that idea of how to do it from start to finish. And hopefully with your talent and the skills that we give you, you go out and win.
Yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, exactly. And I'll just say, one of the articles Steve Phillips wrote, and he talked about it a little bit, you know, why Democratic billionaires are, you know, backing these white candidates over candidates of color. And I think that's another barrier of also the investment side of it, and really working on that, you know, really convincing some, you know, these people that do have this high money, this is where you need to really invest. And we say it over and over, and we will keep saying it, because that's the change. I think when that kind of political class or, you know, that don't really interact with the grassroots as much, we always try to push our message up. And I think some of that gets there, but I definitely think that, you know, this is where organizations like yours really meets that moment right now. We find that still in Virginia, we have an opportunity to lead. And if we're all on the ground right now, I mean, we have to win these congressional seats, because it will affect 23.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's all connected. And I'll say this, because I do think this is important too. We have plenty of people who think that they might want to be a candidate, and then they come through Meet Our Moment and realize, you know what, I don't have the time to do this, or I don't know if my job will allow me to do this. But we sort of give you an idea that it might be that your involvement is best as a door knocker, or as a donor, or as a policy person, or as campaign staff. I think everybody here would agree we need more trained, competent campaign staff. And so it's giving people the exposure to something that they don't necessarily know, that is, I think, at the core of what we do. But it's giving folks who are especially marginalized or traditionally been marginalized saying, hey, look, I can do this, and I can run and win in a place that's not a majority Black seat, that's not a majority Latino seat, right? That's not a majority female seat. And if you guys can hear him, I apologize, but he's
it's all good. No, that's okay.
So that's what's really important. And so I was going to say this. I saw that Robin put the video in the chat. It's really quick. I think if you play that, because I think we're almost done, that'd be great. And then I'll go off camera, go on mute, and come back, and then you guys can see why I do this, because I want my son to have the best future possible. Does that sound okay?
Well, Robin's up there, the chief. We have a video.
It is 104. What do you want to do?
Welcome to the first training session of Meet Our Moment. I'm so excited that you guys are here. I saw, as I looked around Virginia, that there wasn't a training program that was geared towards people of color and women to get in this game. We have an incredible day of programming for you guys, from people who care about putting diverse voices into the public sphere, people who have worked at the highest levels of campaigns, from state and local all the way to statewide and national efforts. And I wouldn't just put anybody in front of you. I put people in front of you who I trust, who have helped me, or who I've known and I've seen help other people get to where they want to be.
I was really excited to hear about Meet Our Moment. I think this is very important, because we need diversity in every single realm, whether it's local, federal, or state. And Meet Our Moment is literally catering to the minority aspect of candidates that Virginia deserves.
To me, coming to the event is a great opportunity to learn from our leaders and how you can be active in the government. I think it's one of the things that don't have the advantages as a African American in the United States. We don't have the knowledge to bridge that gap, and I think it's important to take advantage of the opportunity.
This is a very important point in history in order to have a pipeline of candidates come that look like us.
4.5 years ago, I was at something similar to this. You're sitting around really different kinds of people. and what you will learn over the course of any career in politics. You have to encounter and understand different people and their motivations and what they are hoping to get out of this process. That's what's going to make you a better candidate.
Meet Our Moment is the foundation. It is the foundation of your campaign. It is a direct preview of what it will be like to be a candidate here in the Commonwealth on an everyday basis. It's giving you everything that you will need to know prior to what you run. It's going to help motivate you, inspire you, and you're going to meet other people who are passionate about change just like you.
I think the best part about today was just meeting kind of the future of our party. We've kind of assembled a great group of people from all over the state who are going to be serving in local and state levels. We were able to interact with the people who are already doing the work and who know how to do it, and they were able to instill some really good values in us.
Personally, I learned a lot, what it takes, what's required, the time away from your family, but also the rewarding fact that you're able to help your community and make some positive change.
It was great representation as far as the participants, but as far as the individuals who came to speak, being able to just, take them aside and talk offline is incredibly useful.
I would definitely recommend Meet Our Moment.
I would recommend it to anyone. 100% recommend this.
I would 100% recommend Meet Our Moment to any woman or minority candidate running here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Experience speaks much louder than whatever you can read online or elsewhere. So come learn from the best.
Virginia, I believe, is at a crossroads, and we have an opportunity to put some more people on the field. And I hope that we can have you walk away from this knowing that you're ready to go out and run.
Yeah, he was really excited to say hello to you guys. This is my son Charles. He's 16 weeks old, and he loves Meet Our Moment too. He wants to wear our hats, but his head is not yet big enough. But I think the video sort of tells you everything that you need to know about the program. And I'll just say this: our next session is December 3rd in Prince William. If you go to our website, you can apply. It is, I think we are almost at capacity, but there are probably a few more slots. So if you know folks, please let them know about the program, because you might see them on your ballot here as soon as next year. So thank you guys for what you do. Thanks for bearing with me as a single dad just for a couple hours here this afternoon. And I hope to see you guys again at some point and can bring you back with more success from our program, because it really is, I think, filling a role in the state that we didn't see before, making this accessible to everybody, making it free, so that we can win back this decade after the step backward that we took last year.
Yeah, you said it. And I'll say that thank you very much for being there. Thank you, Charles. And stay safe down there with the storm coming. I want to thank, you know how we love the after chat. So hopefully some of you that can will hang in with us. It's our favorite part. There's a lot of hellos I'd love to give. I haven't seen some folks in a while since the summit, but I want to say at the end of I can't leave us out of it. The very important of our equation is to become a patron of the show. If you can support our work, it's really important. Thank you to everybody in the room that does that already. Subscribe to our social media. And remember, this will all be in the recap email. So if you signed, registered, guess what? You're going to get all this great details. No worries there. And I want to say thank you to the team: Robin Warner, Show Wizard, Stare Calhoun, Ambassador of Buzz, Fennell Norton, Show Messenger, Heidi Dragneff, our wonderful social media diva, and our Zoom helpers are not here today, but we'll just say hello. Laura, I hope you're having a good time wherever you are. And Michelle McKinney, always welcoming people. And she did her first TikTok video. Very well done. And our content concierges, Julie Galdo, Alvina McKell, and Sally Reynolds. And I just wanted to say thank you, Jay Jones, for everything you're doing. Thank you to Stephen Phillips, and get that book. And I just find that the more we connect, the more we grow, and the more we get funky. So get your groove on. Let's run the long game. We're not going to run credits. We're going to run out with Tamara Addison's The Long Game to inspire us. And then if you can, stay around for the after chat. All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's roll. Get it up.
I believe there is one statement motto all trailblazers had to say before they transform into the power beings they are today. It is these words that are truly underrated. It has given ordinary to extraordinary beings the stamina, the grit to stand before giants and face them. It is these words I believe we utter before temporary defeat, the words we say with temerity when they want us to retreat, The words we will repeat and echo through all halls and chambers as we walk through them again, bringing a sea of blue. Together, me, us, you. We say these words when they don't want us to persist, try to make us resist, on us like a moth to a flame. We stand and say, we are here for the long game. I said, we're here for the long game. And we believe Stacey Abrams used these words too. She spearheaded the charge to turn Georgia blue. She didn't conceive at the election, didn't see that loss as a rejection. She had a plan, refusing to give in to the man. She led from the outside, getting more people to vote, instilled hope. She said, our time is now, letting the naysayers know tricks are for kids, silly rabbits. We got here because of habit, perseverance. We can't be tamed. They need to realize we are here for the long game. Look at us, the diversity, the skills, the wit. We got the ability to try and try again. Like the little engine that could, we don't quit. We had a trying time this year. Tunnel vision at its best. We were singing Whitney Houston, then we almost have it all. Losing sight of the goal, but we came and we studied and we're ready for the test. So we're back on track. We needed that diversion because now we're bringing the whole team back into the huddle. What we're about to do as Nova, Virginia as a state, will no longer be subtle. It's time for the election pain. So how many times we have to tell you, we're here for the long game. So we're channeling those who have laid the path, showing us what the long game looks like, never giving up, staying forward tough. Our postcard writers, with every stroke, you win. You've been there for the long game. Our canvassing folks, you walk the path, smiling, assuring you're built to last. You're here for the long game. Our candidates, you summoned Harriet Tubman. You lead us, left no one behind. Thank you for giving up yourself, your time. You are the long game. Our voters, you come through year after year, no matter what. You are the heart of this. You're the reason again why we rise, persist. So in the words of Shirley Chisholm, we will be unbought and unbossed today, tomorrow, and forever. Now let us all proclaim, we are here for the long game.